Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, and today we are going to continue with the 9700 May June 22 paper 33. So it's the advanced practical paper. We had done question number 2 part A1 and A2, where we talked about how we are going to make this figure for the number of cells and the particular plant leaf diagram which was there. Now we are going to move to the next part, that is the B part. Now the B part can be of many different types. So in this paper, the B part talks about the image of some epidermal cells which have been shown to you. So this is a very easy question and it is for 2 marks. All you have to do is measure the length of epidermal cells using the lines M1 and M2. So all you have to do here is look at this figure which you have been given during the exams, take your scale and measure each one of them. As you measure each one of them, please make sure that you write the values at the bottom right here. So the 2 marks which are awarded for this question are for writing the lengths clearly in these places with the units. So if you have measured it as 2 centimeters or you have measured it with 2.1 centimeter, please make sure you write all the values. Then you move on to calculating the mean. First, you write the formula for the mean. Never ever forget to write the formula. This is one of the major part they expect you to write, and most of the students tend to skip this part. So M1, M2, M3, M4, and M5. And because they are 5 values, mean means that we actually add all the values and divide by the number of values we have. So we divide by 5. Whatever answer we get, then you write and do the calculations for the same one according to the M1, M2, M3, M4, M5 values you have. Then you move on to writing your mean value, the mean length of the lines right here. So I'm repeating myself again to get that 2 marks. Get that 2 marks. Make sure you write your values here. You write the formula. You show your calculation. And you write your length with units right here. This is very important, each one of these, for you to be able to score that proper amount of points. Now let's move on to the next question. So these are usually small questions when we move on to the B part. And let's move on to the next set of questions. So for the B first part, which we just did, now for the B second part. So the B second part. So the part B usually deals with either magnification question, mean questions, area questions. So there can be a lot of categories you can have. You can have a mean question, as I mentioned. You can have an area question where they ask you to measure the diameter and the radius. We'll do one type of this question as we move ahead. It can be direct magnification calculation from the diagram. It can be any one of these. So here, when we come to the second part, it says using the scale bar and the mean length of the lines, calculate the mean actual length of the epidermal cells. So this is for 2 marks and we have to find the actual length. Okay, to find the actual length, so let's say the mean length which we got from the top was, let's say, about 2 centimeters. Now they are asking us to use this to find the mean actual length. So obviously we need to have a magnification component which should have been here. So that's what we do. Now we move on to the top part where we go and look at the magnification. So if you look very carefully, we have this 8 micrometer scale which has been drawn. So when we are talking about 8 micrometer, what you have to do at this point is you have to take your scale and put it on this line and measure it. Let's say the measure of this is 0.5 centimeters. Okay. Let's say the measure of this is 0.5 centimeters. Now we are going to use this very value of 0.5 centimeters to do our question as we go about with the second part. So as coming back to where we started from, our mean length which was there, we assumed that in our question we got it as 2 centimeters. And the scale measurement showed us that 0.5 centimeter is equal to 8 micrometer. So all you have to do is simple calculation saying that 2 centimeter corresponds to 8 divided by 0.5 multiplied by 2, and that's where you're going to get your answer, and you will write your answer in the micrometer. Now for this 2 marks, how am I going to be awarded the points? I'm going to be awarded the points for this and for this calculation. These are the 2 marks I will be getting. First, writing what I measured with the scale or how I have been able to predict the magnification here. That 0.5 centimeter corresponds to 8 micrometer, and using that comparison or ratio, I am going to find my length. Please make sure you write each one of the steps. A common mistake most of the students make right here is that they do their calculations on the calculator and they end up only writing that one particular answer in this very place. Please do not do that. Do not think that, if I'm going to leave this entire space empty like this and just going to write the answer, I'm going to get my points. You might not end up getting your points. So be very, very careful. Following the steps, following the criteria is really important. So we are done with question number 2, A part 1, part 2, B part 1, part 2. Now we move on to the C part. So this C part which is there actually varies, that sometimes this can be in question number 1 and it can be in question number 2. So this is a graph question. And the graph question, if you look very carefully, ranges from about 4 to 5 marks. So this is one of your scoring questions. If you look very carefully, all you have to do is look at what things you should be doing in the graph to get you that 4 points. Now let's look at the things which we always need to remember. First of all, before starting, you go to this table which has been given to you. Label this as independent, label this as dependent. Always in the table on the left hand side, the independent variable is given and the dependent is given on the right side. Now, when we are talking about the independent and the dependent variable, okay, when we are talking about the independent and dependent variable, now we have to put them on the graph. How am I going to remember it? I think before you make the graph, as we always say, let's try and do a rough. Okay, never ever forget to do a rough for each of these questions. You will have a graph. Each one of you knows ABCD, and that's the trick which I usually recommend to my students. D comes before I. So we write D here and I here. That's the rule that we always follow. And how do we write it here? You are just supposed to copy paste this entire statement, write it here. You're supposed to copy paste this entire statement and write here. Do not make any changes. Do not miss any units. Do not miss any of the terms which are there. In fact, putting these on the axis gets you that 1 mark. Okay. Next step is to put in your reading in the correct format. Please make sure when you're making your readings on the graph, they should be covering your entire data set. So, for example, in the independent variable, it ranges from 5 to 90. So, best is I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, rather than having 5, 10, 15, because it might not be possible for me to draw the whole thing in the graph. Now, coming back to the other part, have a look at this part. Okay, have a look at this part. Now, when you are drawing your graph, it always says plot a graph right here. So first thing is always draw your axis in the right manner. Second is your graph should be big enough that it is covering 3/4 of the space. Okay. The next point is make sure you mark your points with a circle around it, or you mark it as a star. That's very important that you have marked each of the points correctly, and make sure you join them. If it is mentioned that it is supposed to be a curve, you join it by freehand. If it is not mentioned, please use your scale to join the points. Okay. So use your scale to clearly join the points right here so that you can work around this part. So now we come back to our question. All our rough work is done, and now we come to plotting the graph. So before you plot the graph, as I said, you should have made a rough diagram. And because you have your rough diagram, your first step here will be writing your axis. Second step is putting all these points together, labeling the units on each one of them. Very, very important. Then plotting your points. And please do not just draw a dot. Make sure you have a dot and a circle around it. Make sure you're covering 3/4 of the area of the graph. Please make sure that your graph just doesn't end in this small space. It has to cover 3/4 of the area. It is very, very important to follow this rule. Otherwise, you lose that 1 mark. And last but not the least, as I said, your last step is to make sure that you connect each one of these marked points with a dot and a circle, dot and a circle with a scale. If it is not mentioned as a curve, if it is mentioned as a curve, let it be a freehand joining. Now, as a student, I have marked my four criteria. I'm repeating again before we end this part of the question. We need to have the right axis. We need to cover 3/4 of the area and nothing lesser than that. You need to mark your points very carefully with a dot and a circle around it, and join the points carefully. Also, if you look at the data set, which is actually given to us at this point of time, and if we go up, you will see that there is no 0 pointer which is given here. Okay. So when we draw our graph, this is a common mistake which is made by a lot of students, that they extend their graph to join it to the 0 point. You do not have to extend it. You do not have to extend it. Only mark the points and join the points which have been shown in the table. So here coming to the 4 marker, which is very easy. And then coming to our last set of question, which says using the data in this and your graph, describe the trend in the mean specific leaf area. So here they are asking you a trend. And for the trend, if you look very carefully, it is a 2 marker. So first, from the data, and then from the graph. So you are supposed to have 2 points from the graph as well as from the data which is given to you. So let's go back to our table and let's try and see what all can we write as points from the table first, because we need to write at least 1 point right there from the table. So let's go up. And as we move up, now if you look at this table which has been given to you, this particular table, the table 2.1, which has been given to you can see that as the percentage shade is increasing, the mean specific leaf area is increasing. So a common trend which you can see in this table and you can clearly point out is that as the percentage shade is increasing, so is the mean specific leaf area that is increasing. Now, when we've actually made the graph, are we going to make the same conclusion from the graph? Because the graph is going to kind of look the same. But if we write the same point, it is not going to get us that mark. So our point should be kind of different when we are trying to analyze the graph. So what is something different that we can talk about when we are talking from the table and the graph? What can we add extra to get that extra point? What saves you right here is, because they are referring to the graph and the data, pick up numbers here. You can pick up data here easily. So you can pick up by saying a statement that first the percentage shade was 50 when the mean specific area was 151. However, when the percentage shade increased to 90, the mean specific leaf area increased to 206. So let's try and repeat what we just discussed. First, you give a general statement about the trend. Now, if it was a 1 marker, you would have stopped here. But because it is a 2 marker, the second point which we will be picking up here is data comparison. These data comparison usually come in the questions where they talk about this line using the data, which is very clear. Last question of the part 2 is that use the graph in figure 2.2 to find the mean specific area in 30% shade. Now this question is for 1 mark, but 2 things are supposed to be done here. One is you will have to mark this on the graph. So once you've drawn the graph on the top, so the graph was like this, and we remember that the percentage shade was right here and the specific area was right here. So as the percentage shade was increasing, so was the specific area increasing. Now what we have to do, we have to find the mean specific area in 30% shade. So we pick up the 30% value, we extrapolate on this and we join here. Please do not do an interpretation orally or just by looking at that particular graph. You have to be very, very clear that you make sure you mark the points on the graph and then only give the value. Let's say you give the value and you have not marked it on the graph, you will not be getting this 1 mark which is there. So students, before I end this video for question number 2 today, please make sure that the part 2 is one of the most scoring parts during the exams while they are happening, because first 2 questions which are 5 mark each, that is the 2A1 and the 2A2, are all about drawing and understanding the basic drawings which are supposed to be there. So it's very easy to score that 10 marks out of 21. The remaining part of 4 marks was that for a graph, which adds on to another 4 points, which makes it 14 out of 21. And as we move ahead to the other questions about magnification, it was not that difficult to answer this because all of this was related to the graph. So in paper 3.3, out of question number 1 and question number 2, it is the question number 2, which is one of the most scoring ones. And this is the part where you can work towards scoring the best. So all the best, students. Do subscribe to my channel, and I will be uploading the detail of question number 1 for the same paper soon. Take care. Bye-bye.